Data Bites. Hello everyone, welcome to our latest episode on Denodo Data Bites. This is your host Neha, and we are elated to welcome our guest this week, Emily Sergent, who is a sales engineer at Denodo. Emily's professional experience spans over 20 years as a Java developer, data engineer, and Scrum Master. Welcome to our show, Emily. We are looking forward to talking about all things data with you. But before we begin our discussion on APIs and data as a service, could we learn a little bit about you and your interest in the tech industry?
Hi, thanks, Neha. So just to introduce myself briefly, I'm an American, but I've been living in the Paris region for almost 20 years now. And I started my career as a Java and C++ developer. Then I moved to France, and I eventually found myself working essentially on business intelligence and data integration projects. So at the time, data integration tools were essentially just ETLs and then whatever you could build within the BI tool itself. So developers like me found ourselves very busy writing a lot of code because everything else had to be built basically from the ground up. When I discovered Denodo a few years ago, it was really the tool that I'd always dreamed of having because it made a lot of those data integration tasks easier to implement, and really you could connect data on demand to the different consumers. So now I'm a data engineer at Denodo Paris, pre-sales engineer, and so I help customers discover the product and implement POCs in their own environment.
That's wonderful, Emily. Such vast experience in the data space. Pretty much a data all-rounder then. So how did you get into the data virtualization space? We would love to know a bit more about how your career has progressed and evolved over the years.
Okay, so I worked for a very long time for a company which basically built human resources applications, payroll, training, lots of things like that. And they needed to take operational data and make it available to BI applications. So that's really where I moved into the data integration space. And we found that ETLs in that context weren't enough on their own because a lot of the data had to be sort of operational and had to be more up to date. So that's where I started building things, a lot of things custom with Java, a lot of things around business objects as a tool. So that's when I discovered this other approach, which is data virtualization.
Great. So that brings us to our topic of discussion today, and that is APIs and also data as a service. So let's begin with APIs. What exactly is an API? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So API, first of all, stands for Application Programming Interface. It's essentially any language which allows one computer system to communicate with another one. So APIs are really not new. Some people in the audience may be as old as I am and remember SOAP or RPCs. I mean, I could go on and on. There have been many different iterations of the context of the concept, but these days, when we talk about APIs, we're usually talking about REST APIs. REST APIs have really become the prominent model, and there's a number of reasons for that. The first one is that it uses HTTP protocol, which is the communication protocol behind the web, notably. So it's widely understood and easily used by different systems. REST APIs also use a data format, which is lightweight, easy to interpret, either XML or JSON. So that means that you can use REST APIs in basically any technology. You're not stuck with Java or C++ or Python. You can really choose whatever you need. So that's why these particular kind of API has been really widely adopted. Now, if you know anything, if you're familiar at all with microservices architecture, you may know that this new or new-ish way of deploying small, lightweight, scalable systems to work together, well, the glue that holds them together is REST APIs.
So these days, it is the REST API that's become the widely chosen option. So how do APIs relate to data as a service then?
So as I mentioned, APIs are literally everywhere, and many of them perform an action. For example, when you click on a button to order a movie or an e-commerce website validates your credit card number, they're using APIs to perform those actions. But actually, there are a lot of APIs which aren't performing an action per se. They're accessing data. So they may be searching for the status of an order, or the status of a flight, or looking for a customer's history interacting with a given company. And And that data is literally everywhere because we have, as we go about our our daily lives these days, we're generating data as we search for things on our phone, as we buy things, as we move about. And that data is invaluable. It's invaluable not just to the companies that create it, but more and more they're packaging it and selling it to other companies. So if you consider, for example, social networks like LinkedIn and Twitter, they sell their data via APIs to external organizations because that data is really, really important to them for understanding their customers. But I'm happy to say that it's not just about money. There are more and more governments all over the world that are making their data available via APIs free of charge, via what we call open data initiatives. For example, here in Paris, we have a great selection of APIs that are published by the city of Paris that allow you to search for everything from, upcoming concerts to archaeological sites. So these are all examples of data as a service.
Great. Does it also improve the user experience for customers in terms of ease of data accessibility?
Yeah, it can really be a great added value for consumers because that data can help a company understand them and propose products that they may be interested in. When you think about Netflix and how it recommends movies that you might be interested in, that really it makes life easier for customers who are interacting with different companies. That's for sure.
Wonderful. Thanks, Emily. So, how does data virtualization and more specifically Denodo play a part here?
Well, when I talk about data virtualization in the Denodo platform, the first thing that often comes to mind for people is analytics and data science projects, not necessarily API initiatives. But when I introduce the platform and I explain what it can do, minds change because it's an incredibly powerful tool for those projects as well. At its base, data virtualization allows you to integrate data from different data sources and deliver it to different data consumers on demand. So Denodo takes care of the connectivity. It has over 150 different connectors out of the box. You build a semantic representation of your data, a series of views essentially, in this low-code, no-code environment, and then Denodo delivers that data in multiple protocols to any data consumer that asks for it, and of course, which has the right to connect to it. So how does that fit in with APIs? Well, there are really two major ways that helps your API projects. First of all, Denodo makes it simple to use an API as a data source. You just provide an API endpoint. Denodo will connect, read the API, interpret the JSON or the XML automatically, and then let you transform it any way you like in this low-code, no-code environment that I mentioned. So that's really great. It's really great if you have to, for example, connect data from different microservices. You can see each one as a data source and then work with them together. The second way that Denodo makes it easy to work with APIs, Denodo makes it easy to build an API from any data source, once again. REST APIs can be built in literally 3 clicks. It's really fast. You have to see it to believe it. We also support OData and GraphQL protocols, and which are sort of specialized APIs for data access in different contexts. And we can expose geospatial data via GeoJSON. And all those things are available out of the box. So you don't have to know all the details in order to publish using these different API formats. So basically, I'd say the tricky, time-consuming, and low-value added tasks of building data APIs, Denodo takes care of them, and that allows your development team to concentrate on building better applications, quite simply.
Great. So Denodo makes it simple to use APIs as a data source in terms of connecting, accessing, and transforming data. Sounds like Denodo makes APIs easier to develop as well. But what about performance, particularly when working with data from many different underlying systems?
Okay, we get this question a lot. And honestly, we love answering it because performance is one of our strengths. We understand the different systems. First of all, we understand the different systems and their capabilities, their processing power, their protocols, so we can use them effectively, whether we're talking to SAP, to Snowflake, or to SQL Server. So that's the first part. The second part is that our platform has a query optimizer, which automatically chooses the best execution plan, in function of what the different systems can do, how much data we're working with, statistics, etc. And that will optimize the query, and that no matter how we receive the query in the first place. And this is the important part. Whether you're connecting to Denodo using JDBC, ODBC from, say, a BI tool like Power BI, or if you're using a REST API to connect, or even GraphQL, the optimizer is going to work the same way and automatically. When I was a developer myself, I spent a lot of time optimizing the queries, which I had to drop into my code. And I got really good at this, honestly. I still had to make friends with the DBA. But with Denodo, the developer doesn't have to spend time hand optimizing queries. The platform does it for them. So again, you're going to save time, do things optimally, and be able to work with a lot of different systems that the developers don't have to master. And that's really important.
So basically, it makes developers' lives easy, right? That's great. That's great. So, how are some of Denodo's customers using data as a service to solve their data integration problems? Can you give us a few examples?
There's a lot of variety here, and it's really interesting because we have some customers who are using Denodo to deliver very classic data as a service projects. One example is Inverus. They're an energy analyst firm, and they use Denodo to deliver data about oil and gas exploration, essentially, as APIs. So classic data as a service. We have other customers who are using Denodo to implement the backend APIs behind mission-critical applications. An example of this would be Orange Jazztel, which is a telecommunications operator in Spain. And they use Denodo as the backend to bring back data to a call center application so that their call center employees can see data from everything from the state of the network to the state of the billing system behind one application. We have a major electrical retailer here in France that uses Denodo behind its e-commerce website, once again, to provide the backend APIs. A customer in the luxury sector that uses Denodo behind their GDPR application, and so on. And then finally, there are many customers who are using Denodo's API capabilities to publish data which may originate from analytics or data science projects. Basically, to kind of open up closed data worlds so that the data can provide more value throughout the organization. And this is the case, for example, of Prologis in the retail sector or Swiss Re, which is an insurer. So whenever I work with a customer on a POC, no matter what the use case they really want to test, I encourage them to also explore APIs to test out our capabilities because it'll often open their mind to new projects and possibilities. For example, they may be interested in something like GraphQL, but they've been discouraged to try it out because they understand that there's a certain complexity involved with building and optimizing backend APIs for that. But with Denodo, that complexity disappears so they can try out new things and build new things quickly.
Thank you, Emily. This has been a great session. You certainly made it easier for our listeners to understand APIs and data as a service as a concept. But before we wrap up our session, we would love to do a quick Q&A round with you. Are you excited for it?
Sure.
Perfect. So let's begin then. So tell us about a favorite hobby of yours.
Okay, so one thing I just love to do is paint watercolors, and especially when I'm traveling. So I try to keep travel notebooks where I paint all the different things that I've seen as best I can.
Wow, that sounds really relaxing and a very unique hobby, I must say. And my next question for you is, which is your favorite travel destination?
Well, I have to admit that I spend a lot of time traveling in France, staying somewhat close to home and seeing the different regions. So that's something that we love to do as a family. But I also love traveling to Spain. I love that Denodo's given me the opportunity to do that professionally as well. If you haven't visited Galicia, I highly recommend it.
I will make sure to check it out and let you know. And my last question for you is, which is a favorite cuisine?
Okay, well, I have to say I love French food, and that's one of the reasons I'm glad I'm living here. And I try to improve my own cooking skills as well as visiting as many fancy restaurants as I have time to and can afford. But what I like about the new offices in Paris is that it's in this neighborhood that has a whole lot of different options. And so I've been able to eat a lot of different food, kind of eat around the world in a 3-block radius. And right near the office, there's a very good burrito restaurant, like the ones I used to know back in California in my youth.
Wow, sounds super exciting. I like how you said trying food from around the world in a 3-block radius. Like that gives an idea of how diverse it must be. And also it must be so much fun to explore new cuisines. Like, the ability to explore new cuisines every day. Awesome. Such a fun session, Emily. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us about APIs and data as a service today.
Thanks a lot, Neha. It was fun.
And a quick message to our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please head over to www.denodo.com/podcast to find out more resources on all things data.